Welcome to Life's a Coach. Our mission is to empower individuals like you to take charge of your life, discover your purpose, and elevate your performance to new heights. Each week, we'll be diving into engaging discussions, introducing you to valuable tools from the coaching world, and giving you different perspectives on individual development. Whether you're seeking clarity, motivation, or a fresh perspective, we've got you covered. Again, welcome to Life's a Coach, where the power to transform your life begins now.
Hey guys, welcome back to Life's a Coach. Today we've got life coaches Almar, Sofia, Avril, and myself, Eric. How's it going, guys?
Good.
Great.
Fantastic.
Doing well.
Thank you.
Good. So we're jumping into attachment styles. Juicy topic, I think. Juicy topic. So
We waited for you for this one, Eric.
Oh man, they waited for me. I'm loving it. So why don't we just jump straight in? And I guess really for our listeners to kind of get an idea, kind of perhaps where we're coming at this from, right? So to get an idea, first of all, I think it's important to frame kind of what each attachment style maybe means, because I think it can get a little bit confusing, if that makes sense. So, anxious attachment style, somebody who perhaps in a relationship might be a little bit clingy and kind of has that real need for closeness and reassurance. The avoidant, probably the opposite of that, values independence, self-sufficiency. So if people are getting perhaps a little bit too clingy and need reassurance, they're kind of somebody who kind of drifts away. We have the secure attachment style, which again, we're going to try and dispel the myth that there is this perfect box that we all need to be in, that everyone's being pushed into. But, somebody who kind of, the idea is they value, both independence and security, and they kind of see that as a positive. And then we've got the, remind me, Almar,
is it disorganized?
Disorganized, right? Yeah. So, in different moments, different situations, they might feel anxious and avoidant at different times. So with that frame, guys, why don't we just jump in with kind of, in your past relationships, what have you learned about yourself around these attachment styles and where you might fit, what box you might fit in or boxes? I don't mind going first if no one's going to jump. Otherwise, I'm just going to take it to one of you.
Take it away, Eric.
Before you do that, Eric, can I just also just put it out there too that with attachment styles, yes, they typically show up in adult relationships, all right? Whether it's platonic, romantic, or even work relationships, they'll show up in relationship, but they are generally modeled in our childhood. They start in our childhood, depending on what kind of parenting or how you were treated by your guardians, people who used to be your guardians as a child, and then as a kid you develop this certain way how you relate to the world. So they end up having these 4 models of attachment styles. So just wanted to put it out there, just for someone who maybe this is the first time they're hearing what an attachment style is, that typically they start in your childhood and they show up in your adult, in your personality and character.
But it's also not unheard of for an attachment style to manifest itself in your adult relationships, or maybe your juvenile relationships, that one friend, that one romantic partner, that one authority figure. It doesn't have to be your parents. It's sometimes just a one event, a one-off can also elicit a certain attachment style. So yeah. So why do we need to know about, what's the point? What's up with attachment styles?
Yeah.
Why is it important to understand them and figure out what our attachment style is?
Personally, I think that a lot of the things that we advocate here on Life's a Coach and as coaches is self-awareness, right? Just being aware of who you are and how you're showing up, wherever you're showing up, and knowing your attachment styles helps you, one, normalize certain things because people got different attachment styles, and it's easy for people to what's the word, to make one seem like you're wrong for being the way you are, or the way you're showing up is wrong, or it's bad, or you need to do some work on yourself to fix yourself or something like that. But if you know that, okay, certain situations like this, I recluse, or certain situations like this, I'm very confident and secure in this situation. It's more about self-awareness, just for you to know who you are and how you're showing up in society. So that's my take on it. Anyone else?
Good one.
Mhm.
Sophia?
I think I agree with what Avril said, and it's also a way for you to learn, but also, and this goes back to self-awareness, also understand that there's nothing wrong with the way that you act in a relationship, but maybe you need just to learn about why are you acting in this way, and what are you trying to. Let me put this in another way. For as far as what I learned with attachment styles, both avoidant and anxious, and I can also consider the disorganized, are trying to protect themselves from something. It becomes out of fear, or to be abandoned in case of anxious. And we can also say the same about the avoidant, and the avoidant is to be, I would say, taking off this his or her independency, right? So we act in the way we act when we show the attachment part of us to keep ourselves safe, or to keep us from suffering. So it's also understanding that there's nothing wrong. It's just managing the relationship in a better way for you while you learn.
I would add to that, Sophia, and I love the way you put that. Avril mentioned the importance of self-awareness, and we advocate for self-awareness. Myself, perhaps even more so. Out of that self-awareness, we need to take action with that self-awareness. So we need to actually do something with that. So we learn something about ourselves. What are we going to do about that? Meaning, not what we're going to change, but within a relationship, I think we've spoken about this before, the need for open and honest communication. So if we begin to understand, perhaps we have tendencies, and I want to call them tendencies, right? We don't fit into one box or another box. Nothing's wrong with us, but for that reason, we may have tendencies within an anxious style, for example. If we become aware of that, then perhaps that can help us to take action to be able to communicate that with our significant other, so that now it actually adds, a sense of connection with that person, right? So an anxious person may really feel, and myself as a recovering anxious avoidant, kind of has felt in the past, right, where I haven't feel heard, or I felt disconnected from someone, that feeling of somebody might leave, and it's not a nice feeling to have. And oftentimes, just again thinking from my own personal experience, you kind of get into your own head with that. Do you know what I mean? So I reached a point where I was self-aware of the type of kind of actions I was showing, but I was almost hiding that from my partner. Do you know what I mean? And it was very difficult for me to express that. So I think awareness with communication with the right person, they will hopefully give you some space, hold space for you, and accept that. And that will strengthen the relationship and the understanding between two people. For example, hey, I'm really struggling with, the fact that, you've been at work 5 nights this week, you've come home, we've barely seen each other, and then this weekend you want to just go out with your friends. Do you know what I mean? It's like that. I'd really love to spend time with you. You know what I mean? Like, so doing that in a healthy way, I think it adds some action to that self-awareness. What are your guys' thoughts on, I guess, self-awareness without action?
Well, I think, I mean, there's on one side, you can say, look, this is just who I am. This is how I am. Deal with it. And then you have the other person be like, well, this is who I am. And so where do you go from there? And then your point on communication, look, you've been working all week and now you want to go out with your friends. I just want to spend time with you. I consider that advanced level because that takes a lot to verbalize, at least from my experience and working with other people, to voice your needs, unless you're like super, well, anyway, there's always exceptions, right? I just know voicing your needs are challenging, can be. So I think knowing my attachment style, and first of all, it's a lot of self-work, right? I got to figure out who I am, notice my relationships, and when they don't go well, figure out, of course, I'm the common denominator, right? And so, all right, so since I'm the common denominator, what am I doing to create this instability? And so that's my first step into getting to know who I am and how I respond. And then with practice, because you can't just be like, oh, this is who I am. This is my attachment style. And these are the way that it manifests with relationships. Okay, so that's a nice first step. Now what? Okay, now what? And that's a process, right? And working with a coach is really a safe and can be fun way to discover who you are, what your attachment style is, and how it shows up with the different relationships in your life, and how to maybe now take the other side, look at it from the other person's point of view. And isn't that just the solution with all relationships in life? Even if we have the same relationship style, is always, I don't like to use always, but to take a step back and look at it from the other person's point of view, and then notice and acknowledge your response and your reaction. And you're like, you know what, this is unreasonable. I am acting unreasonable. This person just wants to connect. This person just needs some reassurance. This person just needs an answer, and I'm acting rather childish about it. And there's no need. And I love efficiency. That's for darn sure. So it's very inefficient to play that game. So knowing who you are, how you show up, what your communication style is, and working on it so that it works for you and for other people. I don't know. Was that too lofty?
No, absolutely. No, I love that. I think before we kind of, I definitely want to talk about kind of, I don't want to call it an intervention, but how a life coach might be able to help somebody with attachment styles. Definitely want to touch on, I guess, the avoidant style, just because I think we've kind of spoken a little bit about the anxious. So with the avoidant attachment style, kind of, I guess, how does that manifest with regards to within relationships? And one thing that I found interesting in the reading, like very, very interesting, is that both the anxious and avoidant actually are attracted very much within that relationship because of the relationship dynamics. What you're kind of, Sophia, just like nodding her head, like, yep, like I've seen this one before. But what are your thoughts there on kind of why that might be the case? And kind of, Avril mentioned, past relationship dynamics with, perhaps the push and pull of a anxious or avoidant mother or father. Do you know what I mean? Like, and how now those relationships manifest within our adult relationships.
Can I reframe it? I'm sorry, Sophia, I just have to jump in and reframe it. And what if it is what we're really being attracted to is a person who has the same wounds as ourselves that we both need to heal together. That's what we're really attracting. What if it's that?
Yeah, I like
I
your
love that.
points, Almar. Yeah, definitely. But I wanted to mix here what you just said before, Almar, and what Eric is now putting in the table. I would say that a lot of people that come into coaching or therapy have let's talk a lot, have no idea that they react in relationships in this way because they are anxious or avoidant. And back to Avril's point, you start to read and you start to read and you start to understand, oh, that's why I always were in doubt if that person loved me. That's why I sounded needy. That's why I sounded we use the same word, but avoidant. That's why I run. So a lot of people will not relate to avoidant, anxious, secure, disorganized names, but they will understand the behaviors. And going back to your point, Eric, maybe we could also help our listeners to frame what kind of behaviors would an anxious person have, or avoidant. You were talking about the avoidant now. So that our listeners can also relate, oh, maybe I'm this kind of person in relationships.
Yeah, that's very helpful. How about it, Eric? Let's give what's the menu?
Yeah, exactly right. I mean, I think, behavior, I think it's a really important point, first of all, because I think, like you said, putting people into boxes is one thing, but they're just words, right, at the end of the day. So if we're thinking of anxious styles, and I'll just talk personally from my own past relationships, it's very much excuse the pun, but an anxiety, like a constant anxiety around the relationship, right? And a neediness, I feel, of needing to constantly feel loved, and almost to a point where you're kind of pushing the person away. And I think we've always, I don't know if everyone has, but been perhaps in relationships where it's clear that that person is an anxious style, that they're always texting us, making sure that if we've had a minor disagreement, there is everything okay, right? They're constantly kind of forgetting their own needs to make sure that the other person is okay. So a person, like, one thing that I used to do is one thing that I know on this self-development journey that I need is exercise, for example, like going to the gym. So, taking that need away to make the other person feel whole or complete. Do you know what I mean? Just by, not going to the gym and spending time with them, for example. Do you know what I mean? So I think that might be examples of behaviors that perhaps an anxious attachment style might show. Do you guys have anything to add, or is there any more nuance there?
How do you work with that exactly? That's what I want to know. So let's say this is what you need, right? You like, or maybe somebody's texting all the time and needs constant reassurance. And let's say I'm somebody that, it's too much for me. So like, what do we do? Do we just say, forget it, this is not going to work? Or what do we do then? That's what I want to know. Like, what are the steps to, all right, I know what I am, I know what you are, this is a little bit challenging.
Well, first of all, I think your first point is, like, how would you react in that situation? Like, how does that feel, like, when you're in that relationship? For anybody, right? Probably feel quite trapped, maybe closed off, uninterested, right?
I would say that it depends, Eric, on the level of work that you've done with yourself and the level of communication that you were saying before. Because if I'm empathetic enough, if I work on my self-development, if I work on my communication, I can frame that to the person and just try to understand. So imagining that it's a person that is texting you the whole day and you're working. you probably will not have time to answer back. But then after work, you can go back to the person and say, hey, I was working, what's up? Can I call? Something like that. And this, at least from the anxious perspective, will probably calm their nervous system a bit, give them not what they need at that moment, but then building on. Maybe I'm going very future now ahead with what we are talking about, but it's not that you're going to resolve your anxious or avoidant attachment style in the first week of your new relationship. Things will come back if you are in a new relationship each time, because then you'll need to know with the other person how you can grow and communicate and act better. So I would say that it's a lot of how are you able to communicate with that person and understand that person needs, what that person needs. In avoidant cases, they need space. It's not that they don't love you. It's just that they need their own time and space to be what they need to be. So, and you're laughing, Avril, so please join us.
Oh, for sure. I can so relate. Firstly, just to go back to what Alma was saying, I think an answer to your question, Alma, is in something Eric has already said in terms of like there's awareness and then there's action with the awareness, right? So I'm aware this is the anxious type that I am, and this anxious type my partner has. The action is we're both working on ourselves with that, and the third, at least for me, the way I see it, the magic juice in it is the communication part that Sophia is talking about. If my partner and I can communicate from get go, like, hey, I've done working myself. I know I'm the attachment style. When we have these little fallouts or fights, I tend to do this. I've noticed you do this. So there's got to be that communication. If I could just, the reason I was kind of smiling or laughing, Sophia, is that I had a partner once who was the anxious type, and I was an avoidant, right? And I thank you for validating the fact that sometimes what I need in that moment is to be by myself, right? I'm not saying I'm running away from the situation, right? Yes, there are tendencies for me to pull away, but I feel like my style is like, let me go process it, then come back. Or let me just go vent it or get it out my system, get myself, then come back, be able to communicate. You know, there's some people who work that better the way. You had a heated argument, you rather just go cool off and calm yourself down and think it through, then come back and just be able to communicate. And whether there's some people who would want to like, no, let's process it together. So how, going back to your question, Alma, I'm actually curious to find out an answer for that too, because we had a point where it was now a need. I needed to have some space. She needed me to be there in that moment, right? How do you resolve that? It's not just a want or a desire. It's like, I need you right now. The point I'm at right now, I really need you right now so that we discuss this, or we just be in this space. And on my end, I'm like, I need just some space. It's a need, not a want. So I'm actually curious to find out what you guys would say would be a best way to.
I'll frame it differently to Almar's question and say, you know, what if we frame it in the sense of only we can give ourselves what we need before we can give somebody else what they need. So again, and this is a lifelong journey, but understanding that if you can give yourself the self-love and appreciation as an anxious attachment, you're likely not going to seek that from somebody else to fill that cup, right? Just similar from the avoidant, right? If you give yourself the space and the time that you need, regardless of being in a relationship and out of a relationship, then when you are in a relationship, you will no longer need that space, I think, as well. Again, I think that, we need to start from an individual perspective before we try to think that somebody else is going to solve our problems.
So you're saying that we need to fix ourselves first before we get into any relationship.
Absolutely. I mean, again, I think oftentimes we seek relationships to feel better and to fix us, right? And we feel as if we can maybe fix the other person. And yeah, like, but I think from a healthy perspective, perhaps building that relationship with ourselves and understanding we are whole and complete and resourceful, it comes from a place. I think that everyone on this self-development journey probably hits that point. Do you know what I mean? And begins to understand, hey, the power's from within. It's internal rather than external.
I get a different perspective on that, or at least experience on that. Is we can do a lot of self-development work on ourselves, right? I mean, this is, again, my opinion and my experience and what I've encountered, is that there are certain things that lie dormant if you're not in a relationship that only show up when you're in a relationship. All right. I can have an issue when I'm in a relationship, then have a gap where I have 6 months or a year that I'm not dating and I'm working on myself. And don't get me wrong, I am working on myself and I see the fruit of it. But I jump back into another relationship and all of a sudden, whoa, I thought I'd worked on this, but it was because being in a relationship brings out a certain conducive environment to work. Going back on Alma's element earlier on about certain wounding that we have, whether it's certain wounding will only show up in a relationship. There are certain things that if I have a relationship with my boss or a friend, at the end of the day, I'm like, I don't care. I'm going home to my house. So I'm not as involved or attached in a certain way where this is my person. We are one. We are this, da, 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 or whatever a romantic relationship brings up. But there's certain definitely things that, at least for my experience, what I've noticed, like certain things lie dormant when you're not in a relationship, and then they show up again in a relationship. And not to say that they can only be resolved or healed or worked on when you're in a relationship. I'm not saying that too, but I've just observed that happens too, at least in my experience. And going back to what Alma was saying too, these attachment styles, again, they don't just show up in romantic relationships, right? I can have a relationship with a sibling where my attachment style is triggered a lot, or it shows up a lot just between me and my sibling. And even the dynamic between me and my mom, and my mother, has a certain way that, oh my God, my attachment style is more, I see it a lot more when I'm, relating to my mom than relating to Eric. It's like this. I also feel like certain things are more highlighted depending on the relationship that you're in. As much as generally how I show up in one way is how I'm going to show up in every way, So there's just a general, like, if I'm an avoidant, likely I'm an avoidant in all my relationships. If I'm an anxious, likely I'm an anxious in all my relationships.
Definitely. It's not about intimate relationships only, right? It's about all kinds of relationships that we have. Definitely.
Yeah.
Absolutely agree. No, but yeah, I think, you're onto something there with regards to, yes, so like only relationships. And I would say, as you said, it can be any type of relationship. So it doesn't need to be an intimate relationship. The key is that the patterns, the pattern recognition, the trigger, so to speak, is it reminds you, or it triggers that same feeling of when you were, a young child. That first, I think, manifested this feeling, right, of not feeling wanted or whatever it may be, right. So I think it's important to note. I'm interested to ask your perspectives, right, guys, because Almar had mentioned, that a life coach might be able to support you, right, into and again, I don't want this to come across as a kind of fix situation, because it's an ongoing process, right? Just like anything else is. But yeah, how might a life coach be able to support you in the process of perhaps becoming more self-aware and building better relationships with your significant other, if that's what you would like to do? Any thoughts about what that might look like?
Before we go there, just on a quick question, Alma, did you feel answered your question? The question you paused. Just wanted to make sure that
In a
you
sense,
felt
it
heard,
just
answered.
it sparked some ideas, some ideas in my mind, and whether or not I can practice them or not. But the idea I thought is like, okay, what if? Well, especially you, Avril, you mentioned your mother, your dynamic, and I thought, so what if we both have the same attachment style and we both have the same wounds? There's a bit of compassion that presented itself for me. And now knowing that, and not even knowing, I don't know, but if I decide that's what it is, now I have some compassion and I can look at the other person and be like, oh, just in a different light, so that it does work, and maybe try to understand them better, at the same time understanding myself, because now I've just put myself in a new situation. You know, we always think that resistance is power and not bending, and that's the way to be. Like, no, this is who I am. I'm not going to yield. And we think that is so powerful. And everybody wants to feel powerful, right? But that's actually not true. The true power lies in being vulnerable and opening. And so these are just the ideas that now I've come to listening to you guys discuss the issue, is that that's actual power. And maybe it is a little annoying if I get texts all day that someone's feeling insecure, but maybe I can also, instead of being annoyed, give them some space and understanding, and like Avril said, communication, to communicate. And I think if we communicate in a loving, safe way, that's how we learn, right? Because we don't learn in a hostile environment, feeling unsafe. We learn when things feel safe and loved. And anyway, so yeah, to answer your question, I'm just now thinking about how I might reframe any ways I may be responding in a negative manner to somebody's attachment style that kind of conflicts with mine. And so, like, we can only change ourselves, right? So working with a coach really helps explore those areas, especially with the questions that we ask, right? Nobody asks us those questions in general life, and so we can ask them. And today, the three of you were asking a bunch of questions, and I started to come up with maybe a new approach to try out. Will it work? I don't know. But guess what? We are our own science project, right? So now I get to go out and try this new approach and see how it works. If anything, I win, because I've just grown a little bit more, and I've tried something new.
Omar, to your point, sorry, with regards to that, as you mentioned, try new things and being open and vulnerable, which you know that I'm a 100% proponent of. Some of our listeners may be in a relationship where they're in the cycle of anxious and avoidant attachment styles, where there's the chaser and the chased, and they're in a constant battle, right, of feeling needed versus wanting to be left alone, and that constant, and they've tried communicating, they've tried kind of going through this process, much easier said than done, right, when your insecurities are being challenged and you're in a you feel like you're in a cycle, right? And I know a lot of people may be feeling that, even if we are, contextualizing the problem as something that is easy and fixable. It's not easy and fixable. This is it's not, or sorry, I'll rephrase. It's not easy. It's definitely, it's simple, but not easy, right?
Yeah.
One of those ones. So yeah, what advice would you have outside of, and I'm thinking more practical now, outside of the, you are whole and complete and you have all the answers, and just be vulnerable and just be open. I know it's all good and well to kind of feel that way, but when you're in a relationship, you feel very vulnerable and you don't feel heard, you don't feel understood. What practical things can you do to try and improve that relationship? Perhaps if the other person has no want to work on that, or even be aware of, oh, I'm an avoidant, I'm an attachment, who cares? You know what I mean? And they're just reacting, right? Because I know I've been in a relationship like that, right? I guess what I'm trying to ask is, yeah, what can you practically do, and where is the point that you just say no? Like, this isn't worth it.
You just said it right there. You come first. I mean, like you are only responsible for yourself and how you view and how you view the relationship, how you act in the relationship, how you think about the relationship. You decide what you think and how you feel. You are in complete control. You are the captain. So you decide. And and then you also decide when no is no. Enough.
Interesting what you're saying, Almar. I've not personal experience, but I've heard situations where someone in a relationship acts in a way with a person, and I will not talk about an avoidant acts in a way with an anxious, but one person acts in an avoidant way with a person, and then with a different person they act in an anxious way. And this doesn't mean that they are disorganized. This just means that the answer of the other person, it's different, and it's making them act differently. And sometimes it's anxious behavior, like actions, attachment behavior, but the way that the other person is answering to your behavior will make you answer differently. I don't know if I'm making any sense, but
yeah, sure. It's called trigger, right? You're triggering a different kind of response. Yeah.
And answering in a different way also. So, yeah.
You mean not answering right away, like not being triggered right away and responding, but taking a step back, you mean? Is that what you're saying?
I mean that if you, for example, Eric was mentioning anxious normally attracts avoidance, for example. This is what something Eric mentioned in the beginning, or anxious and avoidant are attracted to each other. But in the case an anxious meets another anxious, this will make the anxious person act in a different way. And probably they will try for other reasons to have a relationship, but it's working out or it's not working out. It depends on the communication, the vulnerability, and the level of trust that you have to make it work.
I get it. I think I get what you're saying, Sophia, and correct me if I'm wrong, but is it something along the lines of, I've noticed as well that certain people can bring out different things from you. If I'm around a certain person, they can bring out the best in me. If I'm around a different person, bring out the worst in me. Is that along the lines of what you're saying or not? I just want some clarity.
Maybe let me just, for example, one person for me can feel like very, I don't want to use the word avoidance. If I'm anxious, I will see some actions of another person like they are taking care of me. And an avoidant person from the same person will say they are trying to control me.
I gotcha. Okay.
the person is the same. It's the way that I'm reading it about the person and the way that the other person. Maybe this is a little bit confusing on the way that I'm wording. It makes sense in my head, but maybe it's not
No,
It does
making
make
sense
sense.
when
It does make
speaking out
sense,
loud.
Sophia. I think what you're saying is much more nuanced, right? Because it's not about, again, not putting people in boxes, but it's really, it's communication, right? So it's how we react or are triggered to the way someone does something or says something that triggers us in a certain way. And oftentimes we're probably not just anxious or just avoidant, right? In different situations, I know myself, I'm anxious in certain situations and I'm avoidant in different situations as well. And when I first learned about this, it's very easy when you know something just on a very, you know, high scale, like, 50,000 foot view that, you try to put yourself in one box or the other, right? When in actual fact, it's much more nuanced than that, as you said. And I think that's important to know, right? That you may react in certain ways in different situations, maybe at work with your boss, or with one of your parents, right? Or yeah, like with a significant other or a friend, right? They may make you feel certain ways in different situations and scenarios. So yeah, it takes a lot of work for sure. 100%. Go
But
on.
the question,
Yeah.
the question you asked earlier on, Eric, did you feel answered? I mean, Alma felt like you answered your own question, but I just want to go back to that. Did you feel answered in what you?
Are you talking about the?
Or you're saying you're actually in a
person?
relationship?
Yeah.
How do you practically?
Yeah, and I knew Alma was going to go there because, like, again, like she's right in theory, but it's just like really, I'm looking for that person who's listened to this podcast today because they were searching, podcasts where how can they fix their relationship? How can they know whether it's the right time? Do you know what I mean? And no one can tell you that, right? So I'm not telling you that we have all the answers, but can we shed light on perhaps, as Almar said, can we just go a little bit deeper into, okay, us as life coaches who talk to people every day, who might be going through these types of situation scenarios. We've been through these types of situation scenarios ourselves. Like, how do you know whether a relationship, again, you don't know, but like, what might be some things that you think about to help you frame a decision as to, okay, I'm going to really try and work on this and, solve this attachment style, especially, again, that cycle, again, of the anxious and the avoidant and the anxious and the avoidant, and we're chasing and we're running and we're chasing and we're running. How can we move into a place where we know, okay, this just isn't going to work, right? And oftentimes that has very much to do with if you're going to do the work in the first place. So I guess I was going to that first of all, and yeah, I'm really interested to hear.
If I may, I feel like leaning towards to what Alma was saying. I'd say first of all, again, going back to self-awareness, right? We all have a threshold. We all have a capacity that we can work with. Someone once said to me back in the days, he said to me, find a partner whom you're strong enough to carry their weaknesses, right? Basically, what they just meant is like, on my own personal level, I need to know my capacity, right? And there's certain things I can tolerate. And I think Oprah is the one who said something on like, you get what you tolerate, right? So I can tolerate if maybe Alma's capacity for BS is here. My capacity for BS is here, right? Regardless, coming from a romantic partner or whatever, like when you get up and like, no, this for my self-health, for my energy, for my self-love, for my self-care is not working for me. Do you get what I'm saying? Then you get to, again, as Almar say, you're responsible for yourself. You get to make decisions based on that. Whether I can be in a relationship, and I must say, because we're people who are doing self-work, at least coaches and that, if I can speak from as an experience I had, is that there have been relationships where I went in a relationship and I was here, right, with my self-love and boundaries and all that kind of stuff. And as I'm growing and doing work on myself, I get to a point of like, no, I know you've got an anxious attachment style, right? But the guy, it felt to me, initially, I was like, it felt to me as if I was more patient with certain things and tolerant to certain things than I am now. This version of Avril now is less tolerant to certain things or less patient with certain things than a version 5 years ago. Mainly because I also got self-preservation, self-love, taking care of myself. Some of the stuff that some people come with. And if we're to flip the script and just not like talk as coaches as per se, right? Or use different words to what people on the street says. Like the baggage she's bringing to this relationship 5 years ago, Avril would have been okay with, but this version of Avril would not date someone who's bringing that baggage in. You get what I'm saying? So I get to say no. I get to say no. So I think I'm aligning with what Almar was saying. Like, at the end of the day, you are responsible for yourself. And I do get it, Eric. At times one feels trapped, and there might be listeners out there who really feel trapped in a relationship. Like, I have no choice. It feels like I have no choice. It seems like I have no choice, but we all have choices. And I also remember a place where a partner that I had once, when they got to know about these attachment styles, she ended up using it as if it's an excuse. It's my avoidance. Yeah, I know, but you should be working with it. Like what we're discussing here is like there is awareness and there's action to it. You know what I'm saying? It felt like she was now using it as an excuse. I'm like, no. You know what I'm saying? So I think, to answer your question, ultimately, what we do as coaches is empower people to make the decisions they need to make for themselves, right? But even if you don't have a coach, just knowing that you have a choice and you get to take care of yourself, regardless of your attachment styles, right? If I've got an anxious avoidance attachment style and I'm working on it and working on myself, but my partner cannot support that, right? I also can say, okay, you're not the best person for me. You can't support me with where I'm at. It's a decision I can get to make too. If an attachment style can make that decision, I don't know, but
give them a chance to catch up, though. Let them know what you're doing and what you're working. You might inspire them, but don't just like toss the baby out with the bathwater. Give them a chance to yeah. I just wanted to.
Awesome. You rounded up beautifully. Thanks, Almar.
Absolutely.
Right.
No, I love those friends. So I guess just to kind of end the conversation, I'd love to kind of hear, and Avril perfectly kind of segued into this, how a life coach might empower somebody to gain more self-awareness or to take that step to move in the right direction, so to speak, right? Or at least become more self-aware, whatever that means for people, right? Perhaps they're not able to move out of that anxious attachment right now, right? And that step, their capacity is only to become more aware of it. How might a life coach, I guess, build that self-awareness and, I guess, life skills to help somebody kind of on that journey? Any thoughts?
Well, remember, we always hold a mirror up, right? I think that's and you can hold the mirror up to yourself at home. You don't have to have a coach, but we do a really great job at that, of having you look. And, coaching is no small feat. It's not a joke. You want to grow? You're ready? A coach is a magnificent tool Really.
Love that.
Mm.
I would say value setting. Like one thing that I think is really important that perhaps isn't spoken about enough, and we kind of spoke about this a little bit when we were doing like first dates and stuff like that, and people like making fun of me because like I'm like going way too deep early on, but I ain't about wasting time out here. You know what I mean? Like it's like I want somebody to know my values, like my non-negotiables, my boundaries as early as possible, so that they can decide, right? And I can also decide if I think people go like years into a relationship without identifying to others. Okay, what are my non-negotiables and boundaries? For example, what do I need in my life to be happy? Like, for example, for me, exercise and self-development was one of them, right? So it took so long for me to express that it was already too late for that my significant other to value that, because I didn't value it in myself. Do you know what I mean? I just didn't express that. So I guess that goes to communication, but also knowing what you need and want
Yeah.
as
What
a
are your
person.
values?
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think a coach can help embody and solidify that for you, because I think again we kind of know, hey, like if you asked me 2-3 years ago, I'd be like, oh yeah, I kind of like going to the gym, like learning new things, like getting better, like running or cycling. Do you know what I mean? Like I could have listed them off for you, the things that I enjoy, but how important they are to me, what again, and through life coaching, one of the important questions that we ask is, why is this important to you? And what would your life be like if this wasn't there? And then you really solidify, I like, this is a core value for me, so I need this. And if we can express that, then I think we can skip that whole idea of, hey, like if I'm in a relationship with somebody and they know that one of my core values is self-development, and so on a Wednesday night I may be going to a seminar after work rather than coming home to spend time with them, and I've explained that and expressed that and I'm clear with my communication, and they can't respect that and they can't understand it. Again, maybe not the first time, I'm not going to just break up over something, but consistently not respecting those boundaries, I think that's a key one. Any other thoughts, guys, with regards to?
It's interesting from what you just described, like just the example you gave about Wednesday nights I'm going to do something that benefits me on self-development that's important to me. It's interesting because the flip side to me would be like, I get it, that's you, that's what you need, right? Where this other person may have an attachment style where like, no, I need you every Wednesday night to be at home with me so that I feel safe, so I feel like in a good place, So in a way, I'm also saying that regardless of what attachment style one has, we are not crucifying one over the other. It's all about be aware. To me, my last words is just like, be self-aware what attachment style you have and how that affects your life and what actions you need to do to better yourself in life as well, or be able to be to effective to be effective in life with your relationships, knowing your attachment style. And even these just terms as well, they're not really who you are. I just want to put that out there too. They're not who you are. They are traits of the programming you've had and how you've had to learn to live in life and survive in life, depending on whatever situations that happen in your upbringing, right? But they're not who you are, and you can work on yourself, you can change, and you get to choose. You get to decide, you get to choose and create the life you want to live. Those are my last words.
And you can also learn about your partner or significant other, or the person that you are in a relationship with. You can also learn about their attachment styles and try to support them and try to help them. How can you both navigate the challenges together? So if they are willing to, it's a journey that you can do together.
100%. I like that, Sophia. If I could just add one more thing on that is that, sometimes and I had to do that for me myself as well, is, when you love somebody and their favorite fruit is, I don't know, a banana or pineapple, because you know what they like, sometimes like, oh, I just want to surprise them and you get them that banana or get them that thing they like. And I think that if you're in a loving relationship as well, it's one of those things like, I may have a different attachment style to my partner, but because I love her, I get to also not just be aware of my style, but get to know about her style, know what she is, and find ways to best support her, right? Again, within the boundaries of not going against my self-care to, sacrificing me for her as per se, but find ways to support her as well in a way that, okay, I get you, understand. And I going back again, one more thing to what Almar says, like in that there's an element of compassion that comes in once you know what your person goes through and though it's different from you, but just like, okay, I understand. I'll do my best to support that. Yeah.
Beautiful.
Love that. Fantastic. Great way to send us off, Avril. Really appreciate you guys jumping on the podcast today. Coaches Almar, Coaches Avril, Coaches Sofia, and myself. Today we've kind of had a little dive into attachment styles. We hope you enjoyed it. Let us know your favorite part, what you want us to expand on, and hook us up on the social media channels. Thanks so much, guys.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
guys. That was really great. That was a deep conversation. Appreciate your vulnerability and openness.
Awesome. Thank you. Bye for now.
Bye-bye.
See ya.
Bye.
Thank you for joining us on today's episode of Life's a Coach, where our conversations aim to empower and support your personal growth. Until next time, remember that personal development is ongoing, so keep exploring, keep learning, and keep living a life that aligns with your true purpose. Take care, and we'll see you on the next episode of Life's a Coach.